how many times have we been told that using less paper saves trees, or that using less paper helps forests? Well, the reality is that using more paper actually contributes to the health of forests and the growing of more trees as well. According to Paper Online in 2007, a nonprofit site started by the Corporation of European Paper Industries, which is basically the face of the European businesses, only 11% of the wood that's actually cut around the world is used for paper production. And since wood is basically what these paper companies rely on, it's in their best interest to make sure that forests are alive and well, and that as many trees as possible are planted. So the next time you use a piece of paper, remember that you're actually helping these trees. And so, paper production is actually a really complex process with many elaborate steps within it. As an avid consumer of paper on a regular basis, I decided to research paper for the last 2 weeks in order to understand how it actually is produced. And so today, because it's such a complex process, I'm going to tell you about 2 intermediate steps in the paper production process. We're going to talk about pressing and drying. And so, let's move on to my first main point, which is pressing. So the paper production process overall relies on 3 basic steps. Which I forgot. No, it involves pulping, covering, and finishing. And even though pressing is an intermediate step within these 3 steps, it's one of the most important to ensure the quality of the paper. So pressing basically involves draining all the water out of the paper so that it can be dried and ready for manufacturing. So first, according to Torres Papel in 2008, one of the main leading producers of paper in Europe, the pressing process can be broken down into 4 basic steps. The first 2 steps involve compression, and the last 2 steps involve expansion. So the first step involves a paper, which I will show you momentarily, involves paper going through a pressing zone in the paper machine so that all the air is taken out of the paper. This helps make sure that the paper will definitely dry. And the second step involves the paper moving on to the felt area in the paper machine so that the water is absorbed by the felt and it minimizes the amount of water contained in the paper. So then we move on to the last 2 steps, which are expansion. The third step involves expanding the felt on the machine so that the surface area of the felt overall increases, and that'll help the water move up from the paper to the felt as well. And the fourth step involves creating a vacuum in the paper so that water won't move back in, and it helps ensure the life of the paper as well. And so this is also a diagram from Torres Papel 2008, same site, and this shows us how, okay, I'm short, but the paper goes in this way, and the felt is here, so the water is absorbed, and the pressing zone is over there. So, now that's basically the overall diagram. So the machine, it's like on the left-hand side of the machine, if you look at the paper machine. But, and I don't have a slide in the middle, so you can just look back at me. Anyway, and so now that we've looked at pressing overall in the paper production process, let's move on to my second main point, which is drying. So drying essentially takes place immediately after pressing, and it makes sure that any remnants of water are removed from the paper, just in case there's anything left. And so this also occurs through a process called vaporization. And so first, according to SAPI in 2003, one of the leading producers of paper here in North America, the process can basically be broken down into 3 simple phases. Drying involves the first phase, which is basically applying direct heat to the paper so that it can ensure drying. And the second phase involves just the evaporation of water from the surface of the paper so that it's completely dry on top. And the third phase, because the surface of the paper is completely dry, the heat can penetrate through, and so vaporization occurs within all sides of the paper. And so that's how paper is drying. And so if you look at drying overall, most machines have cylinders that, this is also from Torres Papel 2008, but these are the cylinders that the paper will go through, and so it just kind of goes like this. And these apply direct heat. How I said in phase 1 that it has to have direct heat applied to the paper. So the paper will go through there, and there's direct heat that's applied, which will ensure drying. And so there are actually 5 different methods that can be used for drying paper, except they all basically involve initiating direct energy and heat input. So that's basically how drying works. So in conclusion, the paper production process is super complex, but we talked about 2 steps in that process today. We talked about pressing, which has 4 basic steps and involves taking out most of the water from the paper, and we talked about drying, which removes any remnants of the water in the paper and takes place in 3 basic phases. And so in our lives, we tend to underestimate the simpler things in life, such as paper. And so the next time you use a piece of paper, maybe you'll realize how important it is and how hard and complex the process is to actually produce it. So thank you.